Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to be here. Water is certainly my passion, but certainly not my area of expertise. So I'm going to leave that with you guys for today, and I'm going to talk to you about disruptive innovation. So what do we mean? I guess I'm going to go through what I mean about disruptive innovation. Everyone's interpretation of this is very different, but I'm going to talk about it from my perspective, and hopefully that will give you a new way of thinking about things. So my background is creative facilitation. I work with people to bring ideas to life. That's my job. That's what I do every day. So whether that's with individuals or with organizations or with my own organizations, I help create these ideas, and then I help look at how these ideas can transition into everyday business as usual, and then I look at how we can transition that into the hands of the consumer. So that's what I do, and everything that I'm going to be speaking about today will come from that perspective. So I really want to look at the challenge. So what is the challenge around innovation for us? And I really want to specifically focus on intention, because I think that that's a really important area for us, and it's one that I'm really passionate on with regards to circular economy and what that really means for us looking forward with what you guys do and also what we're doing in the products and services space. I want to talk about what my perspective on innovation is. I want to talk about what I think it means to be disruptive. And then I want to talk about the opportunity. So where do I see the opportunity for you, for me, and for everyone else moving forward? And how is that actually really exciting? So I don't know if it's something I should apologize for up front, but I'm a bundle of energy. Like, I won't stop going. I'm just going to be full of it. And I'm going to be a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit in your face. So I hope you're all ready for it, but join me on the journey. So essentially, my goal is to help you to think differently with confidence. I think confidence is something that we all lack. It's very easy for us to focus on the negative and not to be optimistic about things. I think we should be optimistic about things. And I definitely think that having confidence to be optimistic is okay. And so I want you to all think about the fact that you are all disruptive innovators. Whether it's incremental or big, you've somehow played some part in your career to date to be disruptive and to actually innovate. So what is the challenge? Well, I think it is to really overcome being overwhelmed with the problem. Ian has spoken about a lot of the challenges that we face. If we just focus on the problem and keep talking about the problem, we're not going to overcome it. We're not going to look at what our alternatives are. And it's so easy to do that. So I'd actually like to give you a little bit of an insight into what I think the problem is. For you guys, it's so much more than this, isn't it? It's not just this. I guess if we looked at it, we'd have to go beyond the problem. We'd have to think about design at the beginning. But for me, when I think about water and I think about the problem, it's kind of my insight around it is that it's everywhere, yet it's not seen. So it's everything, but yet never really discussed. And I know for you guys, you discuss it all the time, but what about everyone in the everyday world? They don't think about the importance of the fact that, yes, water's all around us, but actually having that, I guess, those kind of key areas of what I'm going to go on to talk to. So how do we go beyond the problem and design with an intention? So has everyone got paper? And has everyone got paper here today? Okay, I'd like you to just go with me on this, and I'll explain at the end. I'd like you to all just write 2 lines on a piece of paper. Seems a bit weird, but just do it. And I'd like you to write problem in one of the columns. And I'd like you to write solution in the other. There's a 3rd column, but I'm going to come to that later. Okay? I want you to tally, right, throughout the rest of your day, the problems that you discuss. How many times do you bring up the problem? I want you to tally that. And I want you to tally how many times you talk about a solution. And I want you to tally that as well. And that's going to give you a little bit of insight into how you focus your mind and how much you actually focus on the problem and how much you actually focus on the solution. And it's so easy in environments like this. There's so many aspects of the problem that we want to get out, and there's so many aspects of the problem that we want people to hear. So I want you to do that for me for the rest of the day. I want to talk about sort of what I think the key areas of the problem are around water. I think it's scarcity. I think it's access, so essentially not having access. And my particular area, I think that I focus a lot of time on around circular economy is toxicity. So this idea that water is no longer pure. So when I think about the solutions, I might say that we need more access to, well, we need more and not less of the scarcity to water. We need some more access than what we have now, or we maybe need less toxicity. But really, what if we would think about it from an intention perspective? So this is where my thinking flips everything on its head. So that's fine, solution is fine. What about intention? How about this idea of abundance? Not scarcity, abundance. That feels good, doesn't it? How about this idea of full access? Not some access, not a little bit of access, not a little bit more access, just full access. And how about pure? And I know this is a little bit of a debatable one because I know you can get pure water, that's not quite right. I'll leave that to you guys. But essentially this idea that all water is 100% good enough for us, good enough for our environments, good enough for those people, animal species, etc., that we share within those environments. So when I talk about intention, that's what I'm talking about. Flip it completely the other way and start to come at your problems from that perspective. And really, we're talking about not less bad, we're talking 100% good. I know, it's a big idea, but just run with it with me. Give me 1 second. This is what I see when I think about 100% good. This is what my intention is. This is what Circular Economy Australia is about. It's about a future that looks like that. Not a little bit more efficient, not a little bit less bad, but 100% good, where all waste is food for another system, where we build resilience through diversity, where everything works in systems. Renewable energy is the only source of energy that we have. It's a vision, but that's our intention. And every day that we come up with ideas and every day that we work towards what we're doing, this is what we're striving for. And yeah, we might not see it. We probably won't see it in our lifetime. But what an awesome project to get going on so far. So really, if I was to put my intention into words, I would follow William McDonough from Cradle to Cradle, and I would say, a delightful, diverse, safe, healthy, and just world that has clean air, clean water, soil, and power. And this is the bit where I always slip up, but it's economically, it's equitably, it's ecologically, and elegantly enjoyed. So not some, not a little bit better, but 100% good. And for us at Circular Economy Australia, this is what we work towards every day, and this is what we aspire to have. So really, your intention moving forward today when you're tallying your problems and you're thinking about your solutions, add that extra column in there. Intention. Write that down for me now. Intention. What is your intention when you're talking about your problem, when you're looking at your solution? What do you really want to get out of it? What's the 100% great thing you want to gain from it? And I think you should be aspiring for 100% good. But really what we're talking about here is transition. Nothing happens overnight for us to walk into that world. And yeah, I'm sure Singapore's got some really great ideas. China's got some really great ideas. We're doing some really fantastic innovations. But it's all about the transition. It's about that one step followed by another, followed by 2 more by someone else, and 3 more by someone else. And those actually coming together and creating those steps that we need to start to build a better future that we actually want. And that is about big or small. That's where innovation comes in. So when we talk about innovation, what do we actually mean? Well, I think it's about creating something new that is uniquely useful. Not nice, not cool, not creative, I'm not that way inclined. Something that is actually new and uniquely useful. That is what we're talking about with innovation. And again, it comes back to this idea of small and big. Sure, we've got big, grand innovations. Let's look at what we mean by some of those examples. There we go. It's not coming up on my screen. Refrigeration. That is an innovation. It is something new that came along. It was useful. What else? The iPhone. That transformed the way in which we communicate. I'm sure everyone in this room, or the majority, will have a phone. I'd be surprised if no one has a phone, in fact. It was unique. It was useful. That made it an innovation. Tesla, go on. That is an innovation. Yes, it's taking the same concept of a car, but it's an innovation. Why? Because it's useful. Why? Because resources are important, because access to those resources are important. So it's a slightly different concept, but it's still unique, it's still new, and it's still useful. That is what makes an innovation. So when we look at this idea of disruption, all right, well, what do we mean by disruption then? Well, I think when we talk about disruption, it's about changing what we expect to get from that something new and that something useful. Because when we think about problems and when we think about solutions, we always tend to come at it from the same way. Let's do it like we did before. Let's create something new that's kind of a little bit better than this. But you don't get to those intentions. You don't get to that 100% good by just purely innovating. Because the challenge with innovating is that it's incremental, yes, but it's never really shifting your perspective on things. That's where disruptive comes in. Disruptive is about changing what you expect to get from it and really pushing that. So when you think about abundance and you look at that picture that I show you, it's not about being more efficient, it's about being effective. But how do you do that? How do you think in systems? How do you start design out waste? How do you build resilience through that diversity? It's all about changing your perspective and about what is actually expected. So disruptive innovation, something unexpected that is uniquely useful. I'll let you sit on that because there are a million different ways that you can actually cut and slice that, but that is essentially what we're talking about. So how do you get there? Well, you've got to jump out of the bowl. You've got to get outside of your comfort zone and you've got to think outside of the box. That is the only way that you get there. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in today, we're paid to do a job, right? And we're not paid to do much of this jumping out of the bowl. In fact, disruption actually isn't really sort of something that's encouraged. Why? Because it costs money. It requires resource. It requires us potentially investing in things that aren't actually going to be successful. So for us, as a business manager, for me, as a business owner, I've got to be willing to make that investment. And if I'm not really sure that you're really sure what you're doing, then how do I do that? And really for you, the challenge there is actually to think about, well, how do I justify my intention? How do I build a vision and an intention of what I'm trying to do, even though I don't know how I'm going to get there? And then how do I encourage the environment that I'm in to help facilitate my exploration to get there? And what's beautiful about that is people join you on this. So with Circular Economy Australia, it's completely volunteer-led. We're a network of individuals that come together and we've got our own areas of expertise, but we essentially just assemble and disassemble. And the thing that unites us is our intention for that image that you saw earlier, for that intention of a better world. And we just work together because we love it, because we really value what we're doing. And we know that we're going to trial and we're going to fail and we're going to iterate and we're going to have to move forward, but it doesn't matter because that intention is there. So it always starts with the intention, but then it always goes into other areas. So resources, collaboration, technology, these are the key factors that help harness innovation, but they also promote this idea of disruption. And it's really about how you approach it. So intention, my advice or the things that I've experienced in my time in my career has been to look at a couple of things. So when you're looking at intention, I encourage you to always start with the end in mind. Not a little bit better, 100% good. What do you really want to create? And when you start with the end in mind from a cradle to cradle or a circular economy perspective, you're actually not even considering waste as an option. Because if you're thinking with the end in mind, you're asking yourself, how does that become useful again and again and again? Or how does that transition into something else that is useful? Think beyond what is currently needed. So again, that idea of going beyond that solution towards an intention. So don't just think, oh, well, this isn't such a great area here. Quick, we need a solution. Let's do something with it. Actually think about, well, hang on. What if we didn't just get enough water just to solve this problem? What if we got so much water that we couldn't just solve this problem, but we could solve that problem, our neighbor's problem, and our community's problem? So an example of this is William McDonough did with the building. He built and did the architecture for the NASA building over in the US. What he did was he didn't just look at water as in, okay, well, how are we going to create water in this space and actually ensure that there's enough water and the purification that we need in this space is going to be good for what we need here. He said, well, hang on, what about our neighbors? How can we make so much water that we can actually give our neighbors water? How can we make so much water that we can actually therefore provide water for our surrounding community? Now, I don't know about you, but it's this kind of thinking that gets me really excited. And I really hope that with regards to what you're doing today, that you can start to think about pushing the boundaries, about thinking about that. Because what's so exciting about that is that it adds value. It makes you feel good about what you're doing. It makes you excited about what you can create. And it makes you kind of want to get more involved. So what else? I think that never think that being finished is good enough. You know, as a designer, a true designer, a creative, an artist will always tell you that whatever they create is never good enough. Finished is not done. Finished is not good. Finished is not excellent. Finished is a point. Then there is always room to maneuver, right? There is always room for someone else to bring their idea and shape it a little bit better. There's always room for you to go and learn new experiences and new information to actually move forward and make something better. But it takes time, and it takes time to make something in the first place and then go, okay, here I have it, put it out to the world. Okay, got something to iterate. So whenever you ask a designer or a photographer, an artist, they will never say their work is ever finished. And in your career, you are creators, you are artists, you are in charge of these projects. And yeah, sure, you've got milestones and you have deliverable dates, but at the end of the day, just because it's finished doesn't mean it couldn't be better. Doesn't mean you can't strive for it to be good. And failure is always progress. I think when we talk about confidence, one of the things that I've noticed in every organization that I go into is, yeah, well, we just need to, and I'm not sure, and we're not very good at, and I'm like, it's okay. Failure is progress. Yes, it might cost some money. Yes, it might cost some resources. But at the end of the day, every single person in this room has failed at some point. I personally failed this morning when I tried to get a taxi, an Uber. I'll talk about Uber in a minute. And it failed me. It didn't turn up. So I had to iterate. I had to go and get a go-get instead. Now that is such a small example of a failure, but has it given me learning? Yes. Don't book an Uber with not enough time to go. Has it given me insight into alternative ways that I can use a go-get? Yes, I can use a go-get in different ways. Is it going to make me spread my information and share what I've learned with others so that they don't make the same mistakes that I made? Yes. So failure is always progress. And you have to embrace this because this is what makes it exciting, right? Yeah, it sucks when that happens and sucks when those learnings come, but the hindsight is awesome. And the things that you create off the back of that is so much better. And I think it's something that we should be embracing more. And I really encourage everyone to not look at it as a bad thing. It really is a good thing. So when we look at these other areas beyond intention, we start to look at resources, collaboration, technology. I don't have enough time with you today. I could go into these details in far more detail, but I want to talk about them specifically around the principles of a circular economy. So a circular economy tries to push an alternative way of thinking beyond the take, make, and throw away mentality. It really starts to make us think about, our intention, but then how that intention transitions into the way that we do things. And so it gives us these beautiful principles in which we can guide our thinking and transition into whatever area of expertise that we work with. So the first question is, how do we design out waste? How does waste become food? I've spoken about thinking in systems. Again, is how does one thing connect to another? Building resilience through diversity. A tree is not just a tree. A tree has 20, 30, 40 different functions, as does water. I'm sure water can transition into a million different types of things. Boiling water, ice water, normal water. I told you I wasn't an expert, but there you go. But it's thinking in systems. It's how does one system connect to the next. It's being inspired by nature and looking at how that does it. And it's really thinking about renewable energy. That is the one currency that we have available to us in this world. That's one thing that we really need to focus and be investing in, because if, as a business person, you can start to use renewable energy, guess what? You're going to save yourself some money. You might even be an innovation in that space. You might become a world leader in that space. And Tesla's really pushing the boundaries around this, and it's really making us consider what we're doing. And in fact, beyond Tesla, New South Wales, SunSwift, just won a world record for their solar-powered car, 26 years. They just won a world record for that, for the longest charge for the longest distance on a single charge. So renewable energy is not this thing that's just sort of sitting here. It's this thing that's starting to grow, and people are really starting to use it. And Deso, for example, with their carpet manufacturing, yes, they've started to design out waste. Yes, they're thinking in systems, and it's all about circular economy. Now they're starting to focus on renewable energy. So the principles of a circular economy aren't really about looking at all of them and knocking them all down as you go. It's about looking at that transition. What are the steps that you can do now? What are the low-hanging fruits? And then how do you push that towards that intention that you have? So circular economy is really driving business models. And what I want to talk to you really quickly about is actually different types of models. And I'm going to be quick because I'm quite conscious of time. The first one is collaborative consumption. So I mentioned Uber before today. This idea that we don't actually own anything anymore, this idea that we just use assets and resources and we unlock them, this idea that 8% of the time that we use our car is only the time that we use our car, and the rest of the time it's being unused. So collaborative consumption is really pushing this idea of creating something useful, but changing the expectation of that. And that's where we're seeing this idea of disruption more and more so. Product as a service. So Deso is a great example of this. Instead of buying your carpet, you rent it. So similar idea of collaborative consumption, but it's actually product to service. So it's much more specific around the product and leasing that product out for short, medium, and long periods of time. Product transformation, so Herman Miller in this instance, but this idea that you can actually create products to assemble and disassemble, similar to how we actually drive our organization at Circular Economy Australia, but this idea that one component can fit to create many other components, and that it can be reused continually over and over again, or it can be built to be disassembled to be effectively recycled. And I guess product 2.0. So this idea is that for organizations that are creating waste, such as Starbucks in this instance, actually looking at what that waste is. So for example, Starbucks isn't going to stop making coffee. So coffee grounds for the foreseeable future will continue to be a waste product for them. But what they're now exploring is actually how do they use that waste product to create a new generation of product. And they actually are doing this. So if you put coffee grounds into if you plant mushrooms into coffee grounds, they grow really, really fast. You can create packaging from that. So IKEA's been doing it. You create those packaging blocks that you put in, but all of a sudden you create another product from what was your waste. Brilliant. It's another revenue stream for you. So there's lots of different ways that the circular economy is starting to think about these disruptive means and sort of do something a little bit alternative. So the opportunity for you is to really think about your intention and then to look at how that applies across your technologies, your resources, and how you collaborate, how you work together, how you share those different pieces of knowledge. So I just want to leave you with 3 questions, actually there are 4, around thinking about your opportunity with your organization and what you want to be getting out of disruptive innovation. So how do we design products with an asset recovery in mind? How do we develop product lines to meet demand without wasting assets? How do we source materials in a regenerative loop rather than a linear? Rather than take, make, and throw away, how do we continue to put that value back into the system? How do we create a revenue model that protects the value up and down the chain? And how do we get our customers on board? Because at the end of the day, our customer wants something that is useful, something that they value, and they always want the story. So health and well-being is something that's so important to us, but the story around a company's intention of how they want to look after that consumer is something that they want to connect with, that they want to be part of. So how do you get your customer on board and how do you get them involved? So I left you with this at the beginning. Tally up your tallies for the day. I wish you the best of luck. I hope that you start to put things into your intention box. If I can give you any help around that, feel free to ask me a little bit later. And and I guess best of luck. If I was to just give you one last bit of snippet of advice, innovation starts by starting. Thank you very much.